Open your heart.
Peace and blessings, and welcome to another episode of the ZOLA Experience. It's all about love. We know that love is the highest vibration that we can aspire to, that precipitates change of individuals, families, communities, and we believe ultimately humanity. I am your host, Katora A. Bryant, and today's episode we're going to have join us Mr. Nadir Salaam, and his role in the ZOLA organization is that he is a ZOLA alum, which means that he's gone through the 7-session ZOLA experience at least once. And he is also a ZOLA Navigator, which means that he has had training to be able to facilitate sessions, train other individuals to do the ZOLA facilitation. And he is also the program developer for the ZOLA Experience nonprofit. And I am so excited and so proud to have him join us today. We're going to have just a general conversation about the impact of ZOLA primarily for those that identified as males and how that journey has been for him. So welcome, Nadir.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. So I am so happy that you're here and that we can have this conversation. I know that when we get together, the conversations flow and we get ideas generated from our conversations. And I just want the world to experience the insight and um, the benefits of what we are doing for ourselves as well as our families, communities, and as we say, ultimately the impact that the work that we're doing will have on humanity. And I know sometimes people think that that's a rather lofty goal to have an impact on humanity, but I see it as a pebble that's dropped into the ocean and the ripple effect that we know that eventually that ripple will permeate and it will grow and it'll reach those that are on the other side of the world. So that's how I see what we're doing with solar. So I'd like for you to just share with us um, about your journey and how it has impacted you as you have become more and more part of the Zola ecosystem, shall we say?
All right. Well, thank you, Katora, for having me on today. Um, my journey, um, you know, in regards to grief and trauma, you know, it's been an experience that I've had all my life. Once I put into my context of just growing up within, inner city neighborhoods during the crack era, you know, even just listening to the news and, those neighborhood experiences that are outside your door, were traumatic in itself. Um, as I grew up, I left to college. I had my own personal experiences growing up. Um, and those things basically shaped, a lot of decisions that I've made as an adult. And then, I got really into working with young children and, as a professional. And those experience really shaped how, my perspective on how trauma can shape behaviors and outcomes.
Hmm.
And my passion was that, the expulsion of young black boys and that being an epidemic within a preschool setting. And, further looking into, what is the cause of that, I seen how trauma affected, was a real big impact inside of that. So
Hmm.
as I grew older, when I delved deeper into that professional realm, I started to really work with this population of children that were challenging and had special needs, and I started to see that even more. Fast forward to 2020, COVID hit and the pandemic hit, um, and there's a lot of civil unrest, surrounded around police violence. Um, I personally lost a friend due to police violence when I graduated from high school. Um,
Mhm.
Kind of took a time for me to revisit the experience for me, and doing that retrospective and introspective on the situation, I see how, you know, it's been about 22 years of me experiencing that traumatic trauma and how that has played out over my life. And that was
Mhm.
kind of simultaneous while um, you were developing the Zola experience. So once that was completed, I was one of the first ones to say I need this tool because I want to bring it directly to the community.
Okay.
And I was currently out in the Seattle area, and a group that I was working with called Africa Town. We were trying to figure out ways on how to interact with the Black community during the pandemic. There's a lot
Mhm.
of grief, a lot of loss, a lot of things like that going on, and um, I brought this idea up that Katura had about this program to start addressing it, and that became one of the pilot programs for Zola. And first we just started just doing total groups, and then we kind of started
Mhm.
focusing on the effectiveness of it and seeing that groups function differently when we separate them by sexes. And
Mhm.
then in those experiences, I definitely saw the power of this program in the fact that it creates a sense of community and a conduit for us to start processing our experiences,
Right.
especially for
So
Black. Uh, go
go
ahead.
ahead. I'm sorry.
I was
You
going
said
to say,
especially.
I was saying for Black men because um, there's no particular outlets for us to do so that are
Mm.
healthy. So, and this type of is non-intrusive as therapy is, and it
Mhm.
allows you to share from your empowered standpoint,
Mhm.
and show from a place of a safe space of sharing, which we seldomly are able to have. So
Mhm.
being able to recognize that within the program um, really was a buy-in for me, and I just wanted to share this with everyone that I've met, and seeing that how impactful it is for the community, because as fathers, you know it's important that we have that emotional regulation and
Mhm.
healing, and then if we don't heal from our grief and trauma, the behaviors and attitudes and all those things, reverberate from that. So definitely, that's a great value. And once we heal, like you said, heal the family, we impact the community, and then we impact
Mhm.
the world through that. And I
Mhm.
can definitely see that.
So it sounds like that there's a couple of layers here that you um, discovered the impact that the Zola experience, 7 session wellness experience, can have on individuals, families, and the community. I thought it was really an insightful thing for the Africa Town Land Trust organization to see how and this intervention could possibly impact their community. Just say a little bit more because we want people to understand that it's an impactful program at a number of levels, that there's probably no venue that Zola would not be helpful for. So, talk a little bit about how it's impacted the community, because I know that the Seattle community um, just very, very grateful that they saw the vision. And as you shared, we were doing groups like once a month, and then we were doing 2 groups a month, and since 2021. And how has it impacted the community that that the Africa Town Land Trust um, serves?
Um, I feel it definitely has changed the ecosystem, especially in response to the importance of healing. Through the circles that we've had, they have been very impactful for those community members, and they impact. You'll share that healing with others. Um,
Hmm.
we've been able to use Zola as a way to respond to communal violence and situations that have happened within the community. Um, you know,
Can you say just a little bit more about that? That sounds like a really an important piece of how Zola can be used as a initial response to communal violence, simply because I don't know if there's a situation anywhere, especially in this country that we know of, that communities aren't experiencing some level of trauma. So, what happens when? What can you just give us a brief scenario as to what happened when the community was confronted with a serious violent situation?
um, all right. Well, unfortunately, we've had the opportunity to respond to a few of these type of events. Um, and I'll just say one that was most impactful was one of the ambassadors that we've had from Africa Town. He unfortunately was murdered, and that really
Oof.
shook the community. Um,
All the way across the country.
yeah. Oh, well, there was an article in the USA Today about the impact of his community work. So his legacy speaks for itself. His name was Elijah Lewis, um, and the response from us was immediately, we need to hold space. Um,
Mhm.
so we contacted a few other ambassadors within the city, and we've done it virtually. And then when there are in-person activities, we try to have someone in those spaces so that we can bring that trauma-informed perspective when we're having these conversations. Um, and in these spaces, they're not necessarily the Zola workshop conversations. They're just
Mhm.
a space for us to begin processing the event that occurred. Um,
Mhm.
Sometimes, the reason why it affects us is based off of our previous experiences. So it's a space for us to speak about that as well. And then we can
Mhm.
speak about why, this particular loss is hurting us in this moment. And that is our initial steps to healing. Because, you
Mhm.
can't, you can't heal until you start to speak about it. You can't put it to
Right.
rest until you put it out there. So,
Right. I think another important piece is to really validating for the community that something has happened that is impacting everybody's life. I think that in addition to, we oftentimes will see, people placing candles and stuffed animals in different spaces where trauma has happened in different areas of the community. But as a trauma informed individual, to understand that we need to hold those spaces, even if when the person is in the space and they do not verbally articulate what is going on, but the mere fact that they showed up speaks volumes. That is saying, in this particular way, is how I am expressing how this incident has impacted me. And the conversations that do happen during those, as we call, holding space moments, um, are impactful and they're important. And they are for those individuals that come to the space. And what I really like is that there are multiple spaces for people to come to. And I think that is really, really an important thing, whether it's virtual. I know that the community had several physical spaces, there was food, people were doing ear acupuncture, Reiki in these spaces immediately after the trauma. And that's the kind of community that has to be built, in my opinion, for us as a people, as a humans beings, to move forward, so that we can have a world that is reflective of the divine energy that we all possess. So I'd like for you to say a little bit more about how Zola can be an entry point or speaks to the need of men in particular who struggle more so than women of coming together in a group. What is that like? Because I'm not a part of those groups. That's if we have those that identify as male, that they have facilitators that are all male, the ambassadors are male, and all of the participants. So, what is that experience like? I can tell you from a female perspective as we run those groups, but for men that are even thinking about perhaps joining a Zola circle.
Um, the conversations are very interesting. And what I would say is one of the common themes, when we have our all men circles and men speak about, what do they do when, they have these negative or traumatic experiences. The main slogan I hear is, I got to keep it moving. I have to keep it moving. They can't really process it because some, have shared that they're afraid that it might break them down and that they can't afford to break down. They got too many people relying on them. They have too many things going at this point, and they just have to just shelve it or push it back and keep on pushing forward, which is
Mhm.
not healthy. And there's a lot of reasons why we see, um, you know, a lot of negative behaviors in our communities because of us not processing these experiences that we've had. Um,
Right.
and then once we they understand that this is a safe space for them to to speak about you know what they've experienced and how they
Right.
feel, and then they start to hear within the stories of the other men within the circle that a lot of us have a lot of the same collective experiences, especially when we're doing circles of people from the same geographic area or same neighborhoods and things like that.
Mhm. Mhm.
And when you're able to hear that, it provides validation. Um, and then also the added benefit of being part of these Zola circles, and having the opportunity to tell your story, is definitely a great first step when you're dealing with your mental health. And if you're looking into going further into mental health consultation or therapy, um, it's very important that you're able to tell your story in a way that's really introspective so that your therapist can assist you. If you're
Right.
unable to really tell your story in a way that's coherent, it's hard for a therapist to really provide effective treatment. So, what Zola does is provide those opportunities for you to get out your head finally and get those thoughts from out of your head and get them out into the world. And then people can provide feedback and support and help you to hone those thoughts. And then you'll be still going through your introspective and things like that, but just that opportunity to getting it out in the world through verbally or when you're writing in your journal, allows you to start to see what your experience is and how they have been affecting you. So when you're able to retell your story, you're able to tell it more effectively.
Mhm. Mhm. So, having been in the behavioral health arena for such a long time, I know that in and of itself of someone's sense of readiness, and the joining that it takes ordinarily for somebody like myself to begin to even start to help the individual trust enough to peel away the layers. So it sounds like what we have been able to do is that we create a safe space, a trusting environment, and that people self regulate. They're given permission to self disclose at whatever level that they feel comfortable self disclosing, and that there is that the role of the facilitator is really to encourage them to be able to begin that process. Can you just say a little bit about um, how you chose to, what was it that motivated you to want to become an ambassador and ultimately a navigator?
Well, um, I'll say one really, well, I'll say two important experiences. One, a great one of my best friends in high school, Fred James, um, died in police custody. During my first week in college. You know, and I it impacted me. It's something that always reverberated with me, and I didn't really have an understanding of what trauma and grief was. Um,
Mhm.
but and I'm having other experiences after that, in life, not understanding how compound PTSD works and how compound trauma works. Um, and then the real biggest catalyst was um, me becoming a father, um,
Okay.
and trying to gain a better understanding of myself, um, and my personal behaviors, and it also intersections with me being an educator.
Hmm.
And my passion as an educator, working with children with challenging behaviors and special needs, and having the passion of working with particular Black boys within the classroom. Um,
Hmm.
that those experiences, let me see how trauma really has a huge impact in how our community works and functions. Um, and like I said, the summer of 2020 was an experience for me that was like a reckoning for me because I revisited, the loss of my friend that had a huge impact over my adult life, my entire adult life.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and it helped me wonder, like, what if I had these tools as a teenager, um, growing up, um, to process, these experiences I had, and and giving that to other people was really what has inspired me to become an ambassador and video game developer. Because I think that having these experiences are very impactful. Like I said, this is like the first um, step towards healing, and that's talking about it. And these groups provide that safe space for you to do so, as well as a conduit towards more intensive mental health care. And in our community, we know mental health has a huge stigma to it, and I feel Zola kind of destigmatizes that process, and we do it from a communal level. Because as a
Okay.
community, we can heal ourselves, and we have that power to do so, and that's another
Hmm.
that's really attractive to about Zola for me.
Right. And I agree with you that we have all the tools that we need to address um, the experiences that particularly colonized folks like ourselves have experienced, or Black and Brown and Indigenous people have experienced multiple generational trauma. And we've not had the opportunity to lend voice to the experience generationally. And so we're carrying um, trauma, unresolved trauma from one generation to the next, to the next, to the next. And so for me, it's not a surprise that we have uh, these pockets of violence in our community, because violence is a projection outward of saying, I need um, for I need to have a voice in what I'm experiencing. And a lot of times you've not been even given the time to even contemplate it. Like, what has happened to me? What has happened to my family for generations and generations? So that is really the beauty that I see of the work that we're doing. And so we're going to talk in a few more minutes. We're going to go into a part two. Uh, you'll join us next week for our part two. So I'm going to continue this conversation with Nadir Salaam, and we're going to have him put on his director of program development hat so that we can have a conversation about the vision of ZOLA and the global impact that we will have. Please press the like button and please subscribe to this channel. Um, Go to www.thezolaexperience.org. You can make donations to help us to do this work domestically as well as globally. And we will be so appreciative, and the world will truly, truly be a better place. So, my name is Katora A. Bryant, and I am your host for the ZOLA Experience, because we know it's all about love. Peace and blessings.
Open